Hello folks, I'm John Myrie and welcome to the Wisconsin Northland Outdoors. On this week's show we have reports and tips for you from Jarrett McCarthy down at Hayward Bait and Bottle. And then we talk muskies and musky fishing with musky historian Larry Ramsell. Lots to cover on this week's show, all coming up right after these messages.
Craving the thrill of fresh snow under your tracks? Hayward Power Sports has your ticket to adventure. Secure your dream ride with financing starting at 0% for 60 months and get 2 years of warranty coverage on 2025 Skidoo snowmobile models. We have a great selection including the new 2025 Skidoo MXZ XRS with the competition package featuring the 180 horsepower 850 E-Tech Turbo R. See Hayward Power Sports, just 10 minutes east of Hayward on Highway 77.
Offer ends February 9, 2025. Certain conditions apply.
The Hayward Lakes Visitors and Convention Bureau in Sawyer County, Wisconsin welcomes you to our Northwoods hometown. No matter the season, no matter the activity, you'll always be surrounded by our great outdoors. What more could you ask for in a vacation destination? Woods, waters, world-class events. Contact us for information on lodging, dining, attractions, events, trail conditions, and more. Order your free vacation guide and start planning your getaway today. Visit us at haywardlakes.com or call 1-800-724-2992.
Riding along in my automobile.
Bumping into things unexpectedly? Make your first choice for collision repair. Ernie's Auto Body, featuring the most advanced collision repair facility in Northwest Wisconsin. With a state-of-the-art spray, bake down, draft paint booth for that better-than-new finish, laser technology for precision frame alignment, loaner cars available, computerized estimates, written guarantees, and documented unmatched customer service, the clear choice is Ernie's Auto Body, south of Hayward on Highway 63 and Nursery Road, where quality is no accident.
Lynn's Custom Meats and Catering welcomes you to stop by for their great lunch menu. And while you're there, Lynn's also has a great selection of custom cut meats and sausages, as well as many varieties of snack sticks, jerky, fresh cheese curds, and much more. Lynn's is open Mondays through Fridays from 9 to 5:30 and 9 to 4 on Saturdays. Lynn's Custom Meats and Catering in Hayward.
Today, anglers fish longer. Today, anglers fish harder. Today, anglers rely more than ever on their electronics. It all comes down to catching more fish, and today, anglers rely on Amped Outdoors lithium batteries, period. Visit ampedoutdoors.com today to power your outdoor experience.
We're recording this week's show down at Hayward Bait and Bottle, talking to Jarrett McCarthy down here. And Jarrett, finally looks like we got a little bit of a warm-up, and maybe the weather's changing now. Hopefully we've seen the last of the sub-zero.
Absolutely, knock on wood. I see a couple days that are going to hit 40 around here. I see some 30s, some 20s, but enough of that bitter cold that we've had out there. But, usually the unfortunate part about warming up is usually this time of year it means we might see some more snow rather than that cold weather. So, it's a horse's piece, but yeah, either way, it'll feel nice to be outside again.
A lot of ice out there to get rid of between now and spring.
Absolutely. There's quite a bit of ice, but the ice that we've had this past year has been awesome compared to the last couple of years, and right now we can kind of get out and do a little bit of whatever we want, and now that we're at the end of game fish season, we got some guys that are headed out still doing a few tip-ups here and there, and we're going to have ice for a while, so those guys that want to keep getting out of there after crappies, gills, and perch, are going to have a lot of ice to get out there for the next month or so.
Well, now that the game fish season is closing, that's what we got open. Bass is open, though, too.
Yeah, absolutely. There's catch and release bass season. Yep, absolutely. So, yeah, if you'd still like to target those guys, they're out there. They're available.
We're talking about the panfish. Usually this time of year, too, the crappies, everything starts coming up off the bottom higher because the oxygen levels, especially with this much ice and snow on top, it seems like there's less oxygen down there in the deep water. So they start coming up higher in the water column where you can get over those basins in 30, 35 feet, and you can catch the fish 15 feet down, which is fine. You won't wind up with that barrier trauma on them.
Yeah, absolutely. They're a little easier to find where they're not sitting on bottom either, especially when they're out in that deeper water. So making sure that you're getting around, doing your scouting, finding those fish that are, suspended somewhere in the water column. And yeah, like you said, not having too many issues with releasing those fish, as compared to catching them 48 feet down as, to 20 feet down. You won't have too many issues, so you can practice select harvest a little bit easier.
What do you recommend for bait, this time of year? I know plastics seem to be the go-to for me.
Plastics are a really good option. I still like to think big this time of year, especially when we get a little bit of that warm water influx. I like those ripping wraps. I like jigging wraps. Just a little bit bigger presentation out there right now.
One of my tricks for even open water is everybody wants to go, and I use a lot of them, the little 1-inch gulp minnows, but I'll switch up to the 2.5-inch gulp minnows and wind up getting bigger crappies.
Absolutely. Bigger bait, bigger fish. It helps weed through a lot of those smaller fish, and, those gulp minnows, they come scented, so gives them a little bit easier time finding the bait. So, yeah, absolutely, that'll work.
How about the bluegills out there this time of year?
Bluegills right now, we're still looking for some kind of structure, some weeds, some cribs, probably out in a little bit deeper water, but those gills are roaming those weed lines, and a lot of guys, including myself, I do like smaller jigs tipped with a waxy or a spike. When they're really, really aggressive, then I'll try and upgrade to a plastic, and when I'm really looking for the big ones, I'll switch over to a spoon.
The other thing that gets real good this time of year is usually the perch fishing.
Yep, absolutely. Those perch will start migrating up to those big mud flats, anywhere from 8 to 15 feet of water. They're getting ready to spawn, and a lot of guys are going out there. They're using some kind of plastic or some kind of gulp that's going to imitate one of those little red worms that are coming out of the bottoms or what have you down there, or just some kind of insect life that's hatching from down there. And they do pretty well on a lot of lakes around here.
The one tip, too, I'll mention when it comes to perch on them mud flats is that I don't care what kind of sonar you have, forward-facing, or you got whatever. It doesn't matter. You ain't going to see them if they're on the bottom tight. They seem to get down in that mud, and they're hard to see. But if you start pounding something on that bottom a little bit and get them to come up, then you all of a sudden start to see them.
Yeah, absolutely. Whether it be a jig, a spoon, one of your big depth finders, if you make a whole bunch of commotion on there, a lot of times you draw fish in, or you kind of pique their curiosity. So that big cloud of sediment and food or what have you that's coming up off the bottom, that'll draw those fish in a lot.
One of my friends actually said from Minnesota, he'll drop a duck decoy anchor down there and rip it up off the bottom a few times. It really tore up a bunch of sediment down there.
Yeah, I believe it. Yep.
We got that going on. We've got some decent perch fishing lakes around here too.
Yeah, we really do. A couple of them south of here, and obviously we got the big bruisers like Grindstone around here, but yeah, we got some really solid lakes to go out and catch perch.
It seems like the perch everywhere here in northern Minnesota, everywhere that perch must have had a really good spawn and good conditions, because we seem to have really big perch populations right now.
Which is good, and a lot of those populations we see, they cycle or what have you, but when they come to the peak of their cycle, kind of like what we're seeing right now, great time for anglers to get out there and take advantage of it.
And let's talk about if the guys want to walleye fish. It's closed inland, but you can still go up to Schwamigan Bay, and you got everything up there. And you got so many species of fish up there, it's not even funny.
Yep, you just got to be careful with the temperatures warming up and making sure you've got good ice out there, and kind of just waiting on open water now.
That's a place you want to be extremely careful. And down here at the shop, I know you guys are already gearing up for open water with stuff, setting up everything. You still got some ice fishing stuff, though.
Yeah, we still got some ice fishing stuff. We got a couple of shacks left and a couple of odds and ends or what have you for any of you late season guys looking to stock up. But yeah, we're already hard at work getting ready for spring. We're seeing some awesome new product coming in through the door, and we're excited to get a little bit warmer temperatures out there.
You gonna have any big sales or anything coming up that you think of?
Yeah, if we have anything left, absolutely stop on down. Check us out.
Yeah, I know. And this is a great place to stop, if nothing else, to get good information, because everybody here, I think, fishes. I don't know anybody that don't go out fishing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Everybody here loves fish.
I know, and you like the crappie fish and the panfish. That's your big thing, right?
I do. I am so ready for spring. Oh my goodness, it could get here any second now.
Yeah, and the bass fishing is always option if the ice goes out early, too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Jarrett, thanks a lot for coming on here.
Thanks for having me again, John.
Well, folks, we need to take a break right now and hear from some of the fine sponsors that make this show possible every week. When we come back, we'll be talking to musky historian Larry Ramsell, so stay tuned. We'll be back right after these messages. Hunters and anglers, Hayward Bait and Bottle is your one-stop sport and bottle shop in Hayward. They have a huge selection of ice fishing gear, including portable shelters, power augers, electronics, beaver dam tip-ups, ice rods, and just about anything you'll need for ice fishing. They also have archery supplies, bows, crossbows, muzzle loaders, ammo, and much more to help you enjoy the outdoors. While you're there, check out the bottle shop for a full selection of beer, wine, and liquor, too. Hayward Bait and Bottle is your one-stop sport and bottle shop. There's no time like the present to explore Hayward, Wisconsin, one of the Midwest's most popular vacation destinations. With crystal clear lakes for water sports and fishing, miles of trails for riding snowmobiles, ATVs, cross-country skiing, hiking, and mountain biking, this area is buzzing with activity year-round. Combined with charming local shops and a variety of Northwoods dining options, Hayward is certain to offer both adventure and relaxation for everyone. Plan your trip today and find everything you need on the Hayward Area Chamber of Commerce website. From events and attractions to local dining, shopping, and lodging, visit haywardareachamber.com and start your next adventure now.
Hayward Power Sports has remodeled our service center. This is Service Manager Damon Schrader. Don't worry, we have the same friendly faces with a service team of 16 highly skilled and certified technicians and a parts inventory that's second to none. We're ready to service and repair your BRP and Polaris machines, plus virtually every major outboard on the planet. And remember, it's always a good idea to think ahead and bring your machines early for the next season. See Hayward Power Sports just 10 minutes east of Hayward on Highway 77 or call 715-462-3674.
Welcome back to another segment of this week's Wisconsin Northland Outdoors, and this part of the show is brought to you by the Hayward Lakes Visitor and Convention Bureau. For more information on lodging and vacationing here in the Hayward Lakes area, check out their website at haywardlakes.com. Well, folks, you know, the other day I had a chance to sit down with musky historian Larry Ramsell and talk about musky fishing and some of the things we need to think about and can do to make musky fishing even better out there. We're talking to musky historian Larry Ramsell. And Larry, somebody wants to catch muskies. I mean, what do they need to learn first of all?
Well, I always recommend if you're going to new water, and of course you have on vacation, you have a limited amount of time, you got to hire a guide. That's the smartest thing you can do. That's one mistake that we made. Of course, we didn't have enough money when I was a kid, but if we would have just hired a guide for a couple of days, we would have learned so much that we had to learn the hard way over a period of years, actually.
Well, you know, and there's only, people maybe not realize this, but there's only a few hundred muskies. And if you take a 2,000-acre lake, there's only just a handful of muskies in there because the population density is not that high. And it becomes real important on being able to figure out the spots that they should be on.
Yep.
And chances are, if you can figure out where they should be, you're going to run into a fish on those spots.
Well, and that's why the old-time musky fishermen were so quiet. They wouldn't tell anybody anything. In fact, to give you an example, I was at a sports show in Pennsylvania, and a guy come up and we got to talking, and he started telling me some of his secrets. And he looked around and he says, if my brother comes by, don't tell him I said anything. He didn't even want his brother to know what he was doing.
Well, you know, and they only fish certain ways, too. As I remember when I came out here, came to Hayward, and I fished, you know, it was like I was catching a lot of muskies because I figured out that, you know, a lot of these fish were offshore. They were out there over stump flats and 8, 10, 12 feet of water. And everybody that musky fished, they were on the shorelines and beating the weeds on the shorelines. And, you know, now it's getting to the point where everybody knows where they find these fish.
Yeah, I know for many years that's all we did was pound shoreline. Just every day we'd start where we left off the day before, and, you know, eventually we'd fish every piece of shoreline around the lake. But, you know, most of the good fish were out behind us.
Well, you know, and there's nothing wrong with fishing that shoreline, I would tell people out there.
Especially in a flow age.
You got to know when they should be on the shoreline.
Yeah.
There's times when they're going to be there, and there's times that it's always a storm front or high winds or something pushes them up there. Otherwise, they're out over that suspended open water, I think.
Yeah, most people never throw a bait where most of them are.
How many places have we got to musky fish now? It used to be years ago, it was just at Leech Lake and a handful of, you hear in Minnesota, Wisconsin, it used to be a handful of lakes in Minnesota, very few around.
Yeah, there was like only 80 lakes in Minnesota that had muskies. Of course, Wisconsin had a lot more because we got a lot more smaller lakes in what we call musky country. But now there's muskies in 38 states. So got lots of places you can catch them now, which is a good thing too, because that spreads out the pressure.
Well, you know, and that's what one of the other musky pros told me too, is the best thing we could do is figure out how we could get people to spread that pressure out instead of dogpiling, we call it, on top of the one lake because that lake is hot, you know.
Well, the worst thing is the internet. People catch a fish and they're not sophisticated to understand that if they let out the fact that they caught a giant fish out of Lake X, that the next weekend they're going to have trouble finding a place to park in the boat ramp because it's full of people that listen to what they said.
Well, yeah, and that goes back to that fish handling thing too, is what I was talking about earlier. I mean, there's just way too much handling, I think, so they can get those pictures and videos to put up on social media and stuff. And I think the sooner we can get people to realize that and go back, we can bring that survival rate up a little bit. We're going to be in a much better condition. Yeah. It's not going to stop the fish educated part. I mean, and, you've seen this. I mean, I've got people out there that will say these fish are dumb as a rock. They can't be taught anything. But you've seen that you did some radio tagging studies up in Canada. And, what happened there? Did you go out and you were following them around and you could get close to them with a transmitter, but once you went and caught them with a rod and reel, you couldn't get near them or something?
Right.
Yeah, they'd immediately swim away, and that happened on the Chippewa Flowage too when they did a tagging study out there. Yeah,
there's even been some studies that showed that even the sound of your electric motor will cause them to move off. I got a friend that if you fish with him, he never runs his electric motor when you're on the spot. And he tries to stop, if there's a breeze, he'll stop upwind and let the boat float into the area before he starts fishing. Rather than make a bunch of ruckus and dropping the electric motor down and firing it up. So he's very successful at catching big fish because he plays at the secretive game.
I don't know, who Doug Hannon was? He was called the bass professor.
Yeah.
I mean, I read articles years ago on him that he took it to extremes fishing bass. And, and the fact is, fish are fish. There's a lot of parallels between largemouth and bass fishing for largemouth and fishing for muskies. But he'd take it to the extremes of the color he painted the bottom of his boat, the color clothing he wore because they could look up and see you. And, that's why I think figure eights are so important, especially in darker water, because these fish, they get next to the boat. If you don't want to be figure eighting on top of water, those long rods we got now, you can get down deeper because these fish can see up. They can see what's going on out of the...
You got to get it deep enough that they feel secure.
Yeah, how well they can see, Larry, I saw one come out of the water and snatch a red-winged blackbird off a cattail stalk leaning over the water.
I don't doubt it.
He did, and I've seen, and you've probably seen this too, I've seen him come out of the water and T-bone a topwater bait from the air.
Yeah, I've had that happen.
Yeah, so they can see quite well what's going on out there. So anyway, there's a lot of things to consider out there musky fishing. I don't know, you're going to be doing it for a while yet, but you kind of backed out.
I'm on the downside.
Well, I think we all are. But
I'll be 83 in a couple of weeks. So
yeah, well, I'm a few years younger than you, but not a whole lot. But I think we've seen the best of the fishing, and if we don't make some changes in the musky fishing, we've seen the best of it.
Yeah.
I think if we don't start getting where people start handling the fish different and thinking about it, how they're doing it. I'm not a real big fan of these bump boards. I mean, if you were to use a bump board and get it wet or put it in the water, or a floating bump board, that would be one thing. But to bring them in, and I see too many of them put on a dry board.
Yeah, that's just like handling them with your bare hands.
Yep, and then they thrash around and stuff and wind up in the floor of the boat. And yeah, it's like...
One thing that aggravates me, I watch a lot of these guys that's got these YouTube shows and stuff, and they measure every fish.
Yeah, down to a quarter of an inch or less.
Down to a quarter. How many fish do you need to measure that are 35 to 38 inches long, and how many pictures do you need of fish that size? I mean, it just gets to the point of ridiculous. That's why I think one thing that Musty's Inc. needs to reconsider is measuring to the quarter inch and handling the fish when it's unnecessary.
Well, maybe they need to go away with the members only contest, because that just encourages people to make sure they measure the fish
and turn in fish because they're out there pounding. There's a lot of things that could be corrected, but hopefully it'll straighten itself out over time.
Well, hopefully I can see it straighten out, and while I'm still able to go out and fish in some, I mean, you still make an annual trip or two here or there too, don't you?
I still make 3 trips a year to Canada. So, it's...
The fish up there are even starting to get smart, though, in some lakes.
It's been a big change in just the last 10 years. Yeah, I've been out there for 28 years now, and we used to catch great numbers of fish and lots of what's considered big fish. and those numbers have just went way down.
Yeah,
and a lot of it has to do with weather and water conditions, but we've put a lot of pressure on those fish over the years too. So.
Well, you're not the only one out there either. There's other people too. So, and it just seems like there's more. You just go to a musky show nowadays, there's a lot of people out there musky fishing, and it seems to got to be the thing to do. I mean,
I go to the Minnesota musky show, and I used to know everybody in the show, and now I don't know hardly anybody in the show.
Well, yeah, and a lot of the young guys don't even know who a lot of the old guides were. Well, folks, we need to take yet another break and hear from even more of the fine sponsors that make this show possible every week. When we come back, we'll have the second part of that talk we had with Larry Ramsell. So stay tuned. We'll be back right after these messages. Hey folks, come on over to Hayward Ace Hardware and check out the area's largest selection of firearms, ammo, and accessories. We carry top brands like Browning and Sig Sauer, and we have a great selection of the newest and hard-to-find models. We've got a large selection of ammo with more coming in daily. If you need a scope, we carry great brands like Leupold, Hawk, and EOTech, and we'll even mount it and bore-sight it for you too. We even sell suppressors and silencers. And don't forget to check out our Guns of the Week. Huge discounts on a variety of pistols, rifles, and shotguns that change every week. So stop on in to Hayward Ace Hardware, your firearms superstore. Hayward Ace Hardware, Highway 63 North in Hayward, or give us a call at 715-634-8700.
Hayward Animal Hospital is a full-service medical and surgical hospital featuring on-site laboratory, digital and dental x-ray, in-house pharmacy, and online store. Dr. Ostrander has 40 years of experience dealing with illnesses, injuries, surgery, and dentistry. Hayward Animal Hospital offers urgent care appointments and emergency surgery daily. Please call early in the day for these appointments. They open at 8 a.m. Hayward Animal Hospital is located 1 mile east of Hayward on Highway B. Call 715-634-8971.
Hey folks, the Log Cabin Store in Northwoods Beach on Highway K between the Big Lakes has groceries, ice, beer, liquor, and pop, and now has all new tackle and bait supplies. All current antiques and household items are now on sale and all must go to make room for the sport shop. That's at the Log Cabin Store in Northwoods Beach between the Big Lakes.
If you'd like to have your time fishing be more enjoyable and productive, hiring a fishing guide can be a good investment. Whether it's learning more about fish patterns throughout the year, learning how to use your depth finder to find the best spots and fish, learn how to use that GPS to get the most out of it, or learn better boat control, a day on the water with a guide can really help you to be a better angler as well as make a day on the lake very enjoyable. To book a guide trip this year or get more information, you can find us on the internet at www.wiscnorthlandoutdoors.com and then just click on Area Guides.
Welcome back to the last segment of this week's Wisconsin Northland Outdoors. And folks, we're going to jump right back into the second part of that talk we had with Larry Ramsell. And I maintain that, you get these hot lakes and a hot bite with the equipment, the gear they got now and everything else. The guys that were catching them back in the 40s and 50s and 60s and even into the 80s, those guys that were catching the big fish, that was a bigger feat than what it is today because there was less of those big fish because there was no catch and release and we didn't have the technology and stuff we've got.
Right. Yeah, catch and release has made such a big difference. The one thing about catch and release that I've always wondered about, though, I wondered if in one respect we didn't shoot ourselves in the foot a little bit because, the typical fish pyramid is the big fish at the top and the smaller fish as you go down. But what I think we may have possibly created is more of a diamond. We're getting lots more fish in the mid to upper 40-inch range, but we're getting fewer fish in that 52-inch and up range. So
they're those fish are probably the ones that are probably more sensitive to overhandling because you're pulling them out of the water. The big thing, and I've talked to you about this before, the big thing is that you hold one by the gill cover vertically and you'll get crucified on the internet for it.
Sure.
But don't you do the same damage when you grab it by the gill cover to pull it vertically out of the net?
Pretty much.
Basically, like I said, the best thing we could possibly do is to go back to water releasing on them, especially the bigger fish. The little fish, I think, are a little more hardy.
The thing that was interesting to me early days of catch and release is that, Wisconsin's got thousands of musky fishermen.
Yep.
Have had for 125 years. But when they started stocking the Great Lakes strain in Green Bay, everybody was killing 50-inch fish because they'd never caught a 50-inch fish. And so they were doing just the opposite of what they should have been doing. If you want a fish to eat, take a small one. But you got to let the big ones go so they can get bigger, or,
Yeah.
They were doing just the opposite of what they should have been doing. They were keeping the big ones and letting the little ones go, and they should be keeping the little ones and letting the big ones go. Thank God also for replicas.
Oh, yeah.
That saved a lot of big fish.
Saved a lot of fish.
Yeah.
I know one thing, you've written some books on musky fishing, too, over the years, and I don't know if any of that stuff's still available out there. Or...
Yeah, I've written or co-authored 11 different musky books over the years since '82, and my number one publication is my Compendium of Musky Angling History, and the third edition, it was so much that I wanted to include in it, it became 2 volumes, and that's available on Amazon, as well as my new musky postcard book. It's just a book of nothing but musky postcards, and that's, you'll find from that in the early days, and if I was going to do a second volume, it would include musky resorts. And that was a major form of advertising from the 1920s to the 1970s.
There were a lot more resorts years ago. It seems
right,
like,
and they used postcards to publicize their resort.
Yeah, it was a big deal if somebody caught a legal muskie back then. I remember people telling me about it. Oh, yeah, a lot of these had a bell hanging out there.
Yeah, that's where we started fishing at Fin and Feather on Moose Lake. That was the thing. You brought a muskie in, you rang the bell. Everybody come running.
Yeah, it was 30-inch fish. If you caught a 30-inch fish legal, you kept it and you ringing the bell. And I know when I started, it was hard to catch a 30-incher. It seemed like the ones that were just over 30, there wasn't a whole lot of them right there. But then you jump up to 40, 42, then you start running into more fish because they're probably older, smarter fish,
There was a great number at one period of time when my dad and I were fishing. This would have been in the late 50s, early 60s. Pretty much mostly in the late 50s. Almost every fish we caught was 32 inches and 10 pounds. We weren't catching 31 inches, we weren't catching 33 inches, with 32 inches and 10 pounds.
Yeah, and that all depends on the spawning and
right, that was a good year class, and we happened to hit it.
Yeah, because a lot of people may not realize this. A lot of these fish, they don't have successful spawns every year.
No,
weather conditions
will run them right off the spawning grounds, and they'll just absorb their eggs for that year, and so you miss a complete year class.
Well, I'll tell you what, a lot of interesting stuff there. I know you got the books out there, and I'm afraid some of this history is going to go away. Your books will be there forever. I mean,
they will now that Amazon's got them.
Yeah,
so it's available both in paperback and electronic Kindle.
Yeah. Well, and like I had mentioned, too, the history is important. And you must have had a lot of fun just digging into all that history. Because
it was my life.
Yeah.
If you only knew how many miles I traveled chasing down stories of big fish and pictures. And I spent a good part of my life and a lot of money chasing that information down. That's the main reason I wanted to write my book on musky history was to preserve the history. Because it was scattered all over from Quebec to Minnesota, and there was no central repository for any of it. Back in the 50s and 60s, maybe once a year, one of the big outdoor magazines would have a musky story in it, but other than that, there was nothing.
Yeah,
and
I think there was a lot of embellishment going on back then too, and they did catch one. I can remember one time when Clements Resort was out there on the Chippewa Flowage, they had some old bait tanks in the back, but they had a bunch of old musky charts back in there, and I was back there one day kind of looking through them, and I started laughing because it was like it'd say, so-and-so from Chicago caught this 36-inch muskie, weighed 22 pounds.
Yeah,
like,
right.
Hey, right. What did he feed that thing, lead?
Fed it rocks and sand.
Anyway, Larry, it's been kind of fun. A lot of history in this stuff. Hopefully that we can make some changes in the way we handle fish and stuff, that we can keep that going for future generations. Because I tell you what, it's been a lot of fun fishing for them for a lot of years.
Yeah, it's been pretty much my life since I got introduced to it in the early 50s. So.
Well, thank you, Larry, for taking the time with us here.
We'll do it again.
Well, folks, we're about out of time for this week's show. I'd like to remind everyone out there that if you miss a show, go to our website at wnoradio.com. And from there, you can link to our podcast site, and the show is also on Spotify and Google Podcasts every week. And also, if you're looking for information on vacationing and lodging here in the Hayward Lakes area, check out the Hayward Lakes Visitor and Convention Bureau website at haywardlakes.com. Thanks for listening, folks. We're out of time, and we'll be back again next week with another interesting show for you.
Listen with me, I'm gonna take you there to our Wisconsin outdoors, our Wisconsin outdoors.
This program has been produced and hosted entirely by Wisconsin Northland Outdoor Communications.